Well, Donald Trump met on Monday with Benjamin Netanyahu shortly after he had met with Volodymyr Zelensky, the president of Ukraine. He also managed to squeeze in a phone call on the same day with Russian President Vladimir Putin. Let's unpack this a little bit further now with geopolitical analyst and immigration lawyer Aiden Simadorne. Aiden, good evening. Thank you so much for your time. Really do appreciate it. It seemed this meeting was about nothing, really, because Donald Trump seems to maintain that Israel had held its end of the deal in terms of the peace deal brokered between Israel on the one hand and Hamas on the other hand, and that at least what they imagined the second phase of this would to be is an ultimatum for Hamas to disarm almost entirely. Is this at all possible?
I was going to say, if they wanted to disarm Hamas, they would have already done so. I mean, look at what Gaza looks like right now. 90% of it completely destroyed, right? But the reason why they didn't go in and disarm was because Israel was actually having setbacks in Gaza. We saw weeks before the initial ceasefire was announced that there were actually Israeli soldiers, Israeli occupation forces that were facing attacks, right? So I think this meeting serves two purposes. One is a propaganda purpose, a PR purpose. It's for Benjamin Netanyahu and Donald Trump to go in front of the TVs and say how bad Hamas is and how great Israel is. But that doesn't change the facts on the ground. I think, in my opinion, the real purpose of this meeting is to deal with Iran. I think Iran is what they're trying to aim for. Yeah. Without Iran, Israel would have been able to sweep in, take over Lebanon, take over all the surrounding countries. I think that's the real goal of this meeting. And you're absolutely right, though. Nothing was really achieved otherwise, I think, in this meeting.
Yeah. Let's talk about Iran, because Benjamin Netanyahu has, for the last 30 years, been peddling the idea that Iran has nuclear arms and that they are at least arming up. Earlier this year, Donald Trump had struck we believe that 3 Iranian nuclear sites had been struck. And Benjamin Netanyahu seems to now once again seem to peddle the idea that Iran is at least arming himself up with nuclear arms once again. And Donald Trump seems to buy into that tacitly, saying that if they have to strike them again, they will. The Iran problem seems to be a Benjamin Netanyahu problem, but somehow he's convinced America that it's an American problem. Why is Iran the boogeyman in this meeting?
Iran's the boogeyman because Iran is one of the few countries that is supporting the Palestinian resistance. The Gulf states are doing that. Jordan isn't doing that, right? Obviously, we have resistance groups in Lebanon that are supporting it. Iran is really the big factor here, right? We saw what happened when Israel tried pushing against Iran. Iran was actually able to strike in the center of Tel Aviv, right? That's why they're trying to get rid of Iran. But I don't think that this is going to be successful. And on this point about, these weapons Iran allegedly has, thank you for bringing this up. I've been hearing this since I was a kid. Benjamin Netanyahu in 2002 went in front of Congress and swore that not Iran, but Iraq had weapons of mass destruction, and getting rid of Saddam Hussein would have a really big positive effect. Well, look what happened. The United States was caught in Iraq for around 8 or 10 years. There was the emergence of ISIS, of course, right? So, but going back to Iran, Iran is the critical factor. And I think what Benjamin Netanyahu is trying to do is to convince Trump to strike Iran. Of course, they already claimed that those nuclear sites were destroyed. They clearly, if they exist, were not. But this is not going to work out because Iran's a large country. It is quite powerful. It's heavily mountainous. They tried sanctioning it. That has not led to a change in government. And the other thing is Iran has this critical factor called the Strait of Hormuz. For your viewers, this is an area of water. It's quite narrow. Around 40%, I believe, around 40% of gas and oil, the world's gas and oil, goes through here. If there ever was to be a full-scale war with Iran, they could cut that off, leading to huge gas prices in the United States. So Benjamin Netanyahu is trying to get his angle in. He wants the United States to take out Iran. Yeah. We'll see what happens. The United States has to do this calculus, of course.
One would have expected that the recognition of Somaliland as a sovereign state by Israel would have been topical in this meeting. One would have assumed that Benjamin Netanyahu would have at least tried to lobby Donald Trump to do the same, because there would be strategic benefit for both of them if they did do so. Are you surprised that it did not dominate the headlines?
I'm not too surprised. Western politicians do these two things. On the one hand, they meddle in Africa all the time, whether it's the Congo, Niger, or Somalia. On the other hand, as a Westerner, as someone who follows these things closely, but also just sometimes takes snapshots of what's in focus, Africa is often not talked about, unfortunately, because they don't want other people to know what's going on there. Somaliland, obviously, this is a huge thing, Israel recognizing it. Donald Trump not bringing it up, I'm not too surprised by that. Again, I think it's in America's strategic interest to get involved in this region. I don't think that's a good thing, actually. But right now, I'm not too surprised. I guess Africa, unfortunately, doesn't get as much attention as it deserves.
Just very quickly, why do you suspect Israel has recognized Somaliland as a sovereign state?
100%. It's about the Houthis in Yemen. That's exactly it. If you're to look at a map of this, there's an area of water, it's quite narrow, called the Bab el-Mandeb Strait. This is where anywhere from 10% to 1/3 of all shipping traffic passes through. The problem Israel has had over the last 2 years is the Houthis in Yemen have been engaging in a blockade of Israeli ships in the area. And so Israeli ships going off to the Suez Canal have been under attack. And the Houthis have been doing this as a form of resistance against the ongoing genocide of Palestinians in Gaza. What Israel needs is another country that it could use to more quickly, more directly, in a shorter distance attack. And if you're to look at a map, Somaliland is just so close to Yemen, of course, Instead of Israel scrambling its jets from its own country, going over the Red Sea, it could, if it wants to have a military base in Somaliland, which I believe it does, attack Yemen more readily and try to stop the Houthis to the best of their ability. That's why they're doing this.
Yeah, Aiden, thank you so much for that. Really do appreciate your insights. Aiden Simadorne is a geopolitical analyst.